Hello. If you've watched the other two videos I put out this week, and if you've been a part of this channel and checked out every video I have on this channel, then you know I'm a big fan of Star Wars. So today, I'm going to give my ranking of every single Star Wars movie and show. So, let's begin. Because there's a lot more to go through than you might think. So starting at the very bottom of the list, Star Wars The Holiday Special. I did not grow up with the Holiday Special. I did not actually see it until I was an adult. Maybe if I had grown up with this might be higher on the list. But it was pretty bad. It's probably the worst thing to happen to Star Wars ever. That's above even the Disney era of Star Wars. So, yeah. It was very disjointed. A lot of the stuff did not make any sense, which I'm sure you've heard many critics talk about in the past. So, at the very bottom, all I can say is the Holiday Christmas Special. After that, I would have to put Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure. I think I've seen this movie only one time in my entire life. I did not have access to this growing up, and if I had, again, maybe this would be higher. So Caravan of Courage, I would put here. Next, the original Clone Wars. Now, back during the prequel era, there was actually two shows of the Clone Wars. The first one was done in a very similar way to Samurai Jack. I saw this, it was a mini-series, and it was okay. It wasn't great. A lot of the stuff from that was carried over when they redid it, like Ventress. So that was pretty good. But yeah, I've only watched it once. I haven't seen it released on Blu-ray or DVD anywhere. I mean, it might have been released on DVD back when it first came out, but you don't find it anymore. So it's probably a really rare item. Next up, The Last Jedi. Surprised that this wasn't at the bottom of the list? Well, while I have defended it, and while I have gone on a limb and said this is not as bad as people try to make it out to be, the three movies put out by Disney, at least the first two for sure, I did have major issues with. This movie is no exception. It has its issues. For one, a lot of people like to say the Canto Bight scene is pointless. I agree to a point, but you know what though? The Canto Bight scene is shorter than Jabba's palace from Return of the Jedi, and it kind of shows what's become of the galaxy since the fall of the Empire, and since the First Order is on the move. Is it completely pointless? No. Could it have been done better? Oh yeah. 1,000,000 times better. I don't think it's the Canto Bight scene itself that really brings the movie down for me. For what it brings the movie down, this forced subplot between Finn and Rose, I hated it. That's what brought this movie down. This movie sucked because of the Finn and Rose that they tried to shovel down our throats. And the funny part about that is okay, since The Force Awakens came out, I thought, okay, if anyone's going to end up together, it's going to be Finn and Rey. And at the very end of this movie, the look that Rey and Finn give each other strengthens that. They look at each other like, oh my god. And the entire movie, Finn is going out of his way just to make sure Rey is protected. So, another problem I had too is there were some things that were done pretty poorly. Instead of blowing up the bridge and killing off the crew, just to have Leia floating in space, which I completely can get on board with. You know what would have been better? If she had stopped the missiles using the Force from hitting the ship, and then waited till the ship was out of range of the missiles, and then blew them up or something. Or she just stopped them in midair and caused them to blow up. And all that energy she used to do that caused her to go into a coma. That would have been better. Another problem I have too, which I have told my buddy many, many times, that is the biggest problem with the Disney Star Wars movies, is the lack of original aliens. I get that the galaxy's a big place, but you know what? We have had 6 movies up until this point, up until the Disney era, where we had a ton of races already, and Disney just wanted to shovel out new ones for no reason. Go back through episode 7. Go back through the Canto Bight scene. Tell me if you recognize one single race aside from the humanish looking races. You can't. How cool would it have been in that Canto Bight scene to see maybe Twi'lek servers, or maybe see a Hutt in the background? Not Jabba, of course, because he's dead, but Jabba was not the only Hutt of his kind. Or to see Wookiees being used as low-level labor to the races, to care for those animals. That would have been something. That would have made things feel more like Star Wars. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about The Last Jedi, too. The whole thing with the kid at the very end. It's like, oh, well, now anyone could always be a Jedi. That was the point. Every creature, every person in the galaxy was supposed to be able to have some level of Force powers. But not all of them had been found by the Jedi. And that's what it was basically trying to tell you, was that the Force is waking up again. The Force is coming alive again. There will be more Force users out there. They just need to be found. Kind of like X-Men, you know? If all the X-Men were wiped out, and then at the very end of the last X-Men movie, you saw some brand new X-Men, or some brand new kid with a mutant ability, did you think that just because all the X-Men died, there weren't going to be any more mutants? No. And that's what it was trying to show. And I think people get that all wrong. So, I'm just going to say, at this spot, Last Jedi. Moving on, next up, for this spot, I'm going to have to say Star Wars Ewoks Battle for Endor. This was a movie I actually did grow up with. And being that Return of the Jedi is much later down the list, they did bring back Warwick Davis as Wicket. And it was live action. And since I grew up with it, it was very nostalgic for me. I really wish I could find both of these Ewok movies together on Blu-ray in some sort of remastered edition, because I'm pretty sure the graphics did not hold up. This, to me, I know it's not but it kind of felt along the same lines as Willow. Like, it's a completely different story, completely different outcome, but it just had that same feeling that watching Willow had. Yeah, it didn't have quite the budget that Willow had, and I know George Lucas was on that project too. But yeah, I mean, this was not that bad for something made for children who were fans of Star Wars. Moving on. Solo. I do like it. It is a very well done movie for what it is. But personally, I didn't want this movie. I didn't care to see a young Han Solo. And he's not really that much younger than Harrison Ford's character from episode 4. So it was good for what it was. It actually had aliens and stuff that we had seen, a little bit more so than some of the other movies. So in this spot, Solo. Good idea, somewhat okay execution, not bad storytelling, and it sets up a character we already had set up before. Other than that, it was basically pointless. Next up, Attack of the Clones, Episode 2. I don't know why. I just feel like watching this one felt always like a chore. Like, if you watch episode 1, and then you want to watch episode 3, you gotta watch 2 in the middle. I think it was mainly because of how George Lucas wrote Anakin's character. And I think that Anakin's character was just handled very, very, very poorly through the entire prequel trilogy. So, yeah. Attack of the Clones goes here. Next, A New Hope. While this is the Star Wars movie that really kicked off everything, I love the special edition because it added so much more. I know a lot of people had problems with all 3 special editions, but this is one special edition that I actually, if it did not have some of the stuff that was added in, it might have been lower on this list. Just because of the fact it has that stuff, puts it right here on the list. Next, The Force Awakens. Now, I do love every single main Star Wars movie. Like I said many times. The reason Force Awakens is at this point on the list is because it did do a lot of new stuff. It did set up a lot of, whole new lore. We got to see whole new things. Like when Kylo Ren stops that blaster bolt at the very beginning, that was cool. A lot of people have issues with Kylo Ren throwing tantrums. I actually like that, because if he had just been like Darth Vader, strictly business, and, that would have sucked, because we had Darth Vader. We didn't need a Darth Vader 2.0. And this whole thing, playing on the fact that he's a young man, and he's still torn between the light side and the dark side, and coming to grips with what he's done in his life. I really like that aspect. And we actually see a lot of that. And I also like how they handled Rey. Rey was an awesome new character. We had no knowledge on anything about her. And I remember when this came out, everyone, that was the first thing. Who is Rey? Who's she related to? I would have been fine if she had been related to no one. I actually really, really like where they took her, because it was so off the wall. There was no way Disney was going to shock anybody with who she was going to be related to. They tried the whole she was related to no one, and people weren't happy with that. A lot of people, after this movie came out, they kept saying, oh, well, she could be a Kenobi. I want to put a stop to this, okay? She could never have been a Kenobi. There's no chance in hell that she ever would have been a Kenobi. Why? Because Obi-Wan saw what having a relationship and going against the Jedi code could do to somebody. And I'm pretty sure that it's not just Anakin. I believe in the books, other Jedi had gotten into personal attachments. Count Dooku actually got into a personal attachment due to his family line in the Legends universe. The whole reason he quit being a Jedi was because his entire family had been wiped out and someone had to step up and take on his family legacy, or it was going to be lost forever. And he quit the Jedi Order to go do that. And in doing so, ultimately turned to the dark side, because he started to see the Jedi as evil. That's a common trend among people with Star Wars. They start to see the Jedi as not so good. So, yeah. In this spot, The Force Awakens. Next, Star Wars Episode 1. This is probably the Star Wars movie I've seen the most. When this movie came out, like I've said in previous videos, I went to the theater almost daily because I worked at a movie theater at the time. But I saw this like opening day with my father. We went several times to go see it at another movie theater that I didn't work at. Me and my dad talked about this movie quite a bit. This was really good. Now, if you want to talk about a character that's a Mary Sue or whatever the male version is, I am so shocked that people say that about Rey. When did you pay attention to the Phantom Menace? Oh my God, was Anakin a Mary Sue? Now you can chalk it up and say, oh, but he had the Force. You know what? Just because he can fly a pod racer does not mean he can fly a starfighter. A starfighter and a pod racer are two totally different types of vehicles. Just because you can drive a car does not mean you can handle a semi or a motorcycle. If all you ever learn how to drive is a motorcycle, you're going to have some issues jumping into a car. You're going to have to learn a whole new set of rules. So, ultimately, Anakin was kind of the first Mary Sue. And you know what? That's kind of how, if you go just based on the movies, that's kind of how this all kind of fits in. I mean, unless you were a reader of the expanded content, which that's what gets me when people say the books and the games don't matter, that you shouldn't have to read that. Well, okay, if you go just by the movies, then Luke is just as much a Mary Sue as Anakin and Rey. It's funny how all three of these main characters are Mary Sues at some point. But we'll dive into why he's a Mary Sue when we get to a later movie. But The Phantom Menace. It had Ray Parks as Darth Maul, which was incredibly awesome. The fight scene, the fight choreography was so good. So that's why Phantom Menace is this spot on the list. Next up, The Clone Wars. The Clone Wars series was a series I've maybe watched once. I do need to rewatch it, and I probably will since I have Disney Plus. That's probably one of the benefits of having Disney Plus, is I'm actually able to sit down again and rewatch the entire series. It wasn't bad, from what I remember. I had a lot of other things going on in life. I have my book series that I'm trying to get out, and so I kind of just had it playing in the background whenever it was on, or I maybe catched it when it was on TV. But yeah, it wasn't something I was totally stoked for. But I do remember there were a lot of good moments that played back to the original Star Wars movies. I do want to put a little disclaimer here. I'm not going to add Rebels or any other new cartoon show. So Clone Wars is the only cartoon show left that I was going to put on this list. Mainly due to the fact that I just barely started Rebels recently. I'm not too thrilled about Resistance, because, it's just not my cup of tea, I guess. I don't know, it just doesn't click with me. But Clone Wars does, and Clone Wars is one I do want to go back, start from the beginning, and rewatch all of it.
Looking for something to pass the time? Need something good to read or listen to? Then check out his amazing paperback series on Amazon, The Guardian of Light. It is an epic saga which will make any reader feel young again. This adult fantasy series was inspired by the words of J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, and H.P. Lovecraft. Now Sean is very hush-hush on this, but what we can tell you is it has fairies, goblins, toys, love, adventure, trolls, magic, thrills, elves, elementals, chills, the Illuminati, magic, gods, Atlantis, wizards, a snowman, dwarves, and even oops, can't say that. But seriously, check it out. This is a fantasy series that takes place in our world today and reinvents Christmas as we know it. So what are you waiting for? Go to Amazon.com and check out his paperback series, The Guardian of Light.
Moving on, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, the reason Rise of Skywalker is this low on the list is because I've done a lot of thinking, and while I do really like it, and we do get to see a lot of good things, there are just a few little issues I have. First off, again, going back to my thoughts on Finn and Rey, they didn't quite fully deliver on that. It's like they kind of sidelined Finn in that movie. And I have to agree with the actor that, there needs to be some justice for that. They need to do something with his character. Or, God, I don't know. I mean, now that it's over, it's just like, that was a really wasted opportunity. I wasn't too shocked about what happened with Chewbacca. I know a lot of people are upset over that. Me, I'm glad they didn't go that route. I actually remember when I saw it in theaters, I actually missed the second transport. I only saw the one transport. So, yeah, I completely missed that. But still, there were so many good visuals and so many good effects. And if you really, really pay attention, there's so much good lore and explanation to Rey and everything. Oh my God, that's why I actually like this movie quite a bit and put it this high up on the list. Because while it has its faults, and it does feel very fast-paced, I still feel like this movie can ultimately fix the franchise. There's a lot that can be done with this, moving forwards and moving backwards in the franchise, that can fix Star Wars. Which, if you saw my last video on how to fix the Star Wars franchise, some of that is very reliant on this movie. So, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Next up, The Empire Strikes Back. Oh my god, he didn't put this one at the top. Oh, that should shock nobody. I like this movie. Don't get me wrong. I really do. I really like The Empire Strikes Back. But when people talk about Rey being a Mary Sue, here's one thing I like to point out. If you think the books don't matter, if you think the games don't matter, if you think the expanded content doesn't matter, then please explain to me how Luke learned how to use the Force. Go ahead, I'll wait. Luke gets captured by a Wampa, and his lightsaber is away from him, stuck in the snow. And he magically all of a sudden knows how to call it to his hand. Now, this, of course, was just thrown in because plot convenience, I'd say. Because we never saw this exact power used in Episode 4. We never saw somebody move something with their mind. It was maybe hinted at. But, yeah, I mean, Luke did not start training with Yoda yet. Luke barely trained with Obi-Wan in the previous movie. I mean, he had just literally started training, and then Obi-Wan died. Now, you could say that several days passed, and he got a little more training than we actually saw, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, that didn't happen. Because, I mean, why wouldn't they show that? Other than that, there's a lot of great parts to this. And me and my buddy have recently combed through Empire, frame by frame, and I've come to realize a lot of stuff that doesn't add up. So, yeah, I mean, this is by far not the greatest Star Wars movie out there. I don't know why people think it is. But don't worry. Next up is Return of the Jedi. This is probably the Star Wars movie I watched the most of the original trilogy growing up. I love the end battle scene. I didn't care for the Jabba's palace scene. In fact, I would usually skip over most of it as a child. I remember fast forwarding till it was about over, just because it was so boring. And the special edition spiced it up for kids, I think, a little bit. And that's what some of the changes, I think, were for. To get some of those more straight up boring parts toned out a little bit for children, so children would sit through it. But the Rancor fight was not entirely impressive. It was okay. I wasn't interested in women at a young age, so seeing the Twilight dancers dancing around didn't thrill me at all. I wanted to see fights going on. I wanted to see laser battles and people fighting with laser swords. It just seemed very boring, really. And I didn't pick up on a lot of the jokes that were made. So I would usually skip that section and go straight to where they're fighting over the dunes and then watch them leave. Me and my buddy, we looked at Return of the Jedi, like I said, and we looked at Last Jedi, and yeah, the Jabba the Hutt scene is actually longer than the Canto Bites scene. So, I mean, and the thing about the Jabba palace scene, growing up and having had different viewings of this, I'd have to say the Jabba's palace scene for me, what really brought this down was the fact that It's very pointless. Like, the entire mission is so freaking pointless. I understand it's to get Han back, but literally, if one thing had gone wrong, then, yeah, everybody would have died. I mean, if Jabba did not accept the droids as gifts from Luke and destroyed them, R2 would not have been in place. C-3PO would not have been his new translator. I mean, he could have killed, Chewie right away. Basically, what ultimately should have happened is we should have just watched Lando infiltrate Jabba's palace, have C-3PO and Chewbacca at the ship waiting, and then watch Lando sneak in, get Han, get him back to the ship. But that would have cut out so much of the movie. And, yeah, so Return of the Jedi goes here. Next up. Alright, actually, in this spot, I'm going to actually put right now The Mandalorian. I believe that The Mandalorian is probably one of the best things to happen to Star Wars in a long time. It's very faithful to the original material. It does not solely focus on the Jedi, and it seems to have a lot of callbacks to both the original films, the prequels, and even the side stuff like the Clone Wars series, which I talked about earlier. Now, I hope that The Mandalorian stays on the track that it is. Only time will tell. Rogue One. Of the last two movies, I have to say Rogue One was pretty good. This could have been at the top of the list. I like the fact that I did not need to focus on Jedi. But the problems with this story is we knew where the story was going to go. We knew what was going to happen. And my biggest gripe with this film actually is only one thing. Aside from the fact we knew where this story was going to end up, was the handling of Vader. Now, I'm not talking about the famous fight scene at the end with Vader. I'm talking about the mid scene with Vader. The one where this officer shows up, complains and whines to Vader about who's in charge, him or Tarkin, and Vader just kind of chokes him a little bit. I didn't care for that scene. I actually came up with an idea that would have been way better. So, if anyone knows the people that were involved with this, I'd love to hear if you think this is way better. I know that's a big thing to ask, but maybe one day somebody will. But viewers, tell me honestly if this is better. So, you have this mysterious silver ship show up at the castle on Mustafar. And you basically see the Emperor come out of the shuttle, led by a legion of Red Guards. And we watch Vader, we keep cutting back and forth from him walking through the halls to Vader putting on his helmet, walking through the halls. They kind of meet up in the middle, and they start walking together. And the Emperor tells Vader that he has sensed a disturbance in the Force, that there is a threat to their secret plans. And Vader needs to get off his ass and go do something about this before it's too late. And that would have been better. That would have been the way to bring Vader into it. Having the Emperor concerned about the Death Star. You know, you could have had a extra scene with Vader too, where Vader shows up and then the guy's complaining and Vader's just like, chill out. You do what you're told. But, in my opinion, the best of all the Star Wars movies, and there's only one left, so, goes to Revenge of the Sith. This movie had a lot going against it, honestly, because true, honest Star Wars fans, they already knew where this entire prequel trilogy was going to end up, where it was going. The only problems I have with this is the fact that, again, I was not very happy with the way Anakin was handled. The whole thing with Anakin and Padme, the entire thing just seemed very rushed. His turn to the dark side seemed even more rushed. In this movie, where they put him on the council and say, you'll be on this council, but you're not a master, and he gets all butthurt about it, I think that should have been an Attack of the Clones. That would have been a better spot to put it in, because then it would have showed that he's been on this council all this time, and no matter how good he does, they will not make him a Jedi Master. That he keeps getting passed up, even though the only reason he's on the council is because of the fact Palpatine put him there. And it would have solidified the bonds between him and Palpatine even more, that, we're just kind of told. We're not really shown. But if Palpatine had put him on the council, if he was reporting to Palpatine on a daily basis back during Attack of the Clones, that's a lot larger time frame where Palpatine's had time to work on Anakin and start coaxing him over to the dark side, rather than the really force rush job they did in Revenge of the Sith. And that's really my only gripe with the movie. The fight scenes are pretty good. Actually I do have one more gripe, and that is the stuff with R2 at the beginning was really forced slapstick. And it's like, we really didn't need that. There was a lot more you could have done other than forcing some slapstick with R2. Yes, we finally get, some R2 doing a little bit more than just opening doors. But, other than that, there's really nothing. So, this has been my ranking of the entire Star Wars franchise. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Which is the best movie to you? Which is the worst? Have you seen everything on this list? Have you not? I really look forward to seeing any comments. And please, if you haven't, subscribe. Every time I get 10 new subscribers, I give out a free digital code for a movie. Some random movie, I give out a free digital code. So, help grow this channel. Subscribe today. And keep yourself notified by clicking the bell so you can know when a new video goes up. And if you notice that my channel has hit another 10 subscribers, currently we went down a subscriber, so we're at 22. But if we get up to 30, there's another free digital code. So please subscribe today. Share this with your friends who might be Star Wars fans also. And let's talk, Leave a comment down below. Tell me what your ranking would be. I want to thank you all for watching, and happy writing.